Hello, everybody. Say hello in the chat.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Aleksandra and I are super excited to have you all here. It's been great fun planning all this and a great excuse to chat about one of our favorite subjects, which we love. If you can also maybe just in the chat introduce yourself with your reasons why you love graphic novels or comics, or what it is that made you came along today, where you're based as well, maybe who you teach. Do you teach younger learners, older learners, people from refugee backgrounds like me? Who do you teach? This meeting is being recorded because we are planning on putting it on YouTube at some point. So if you're not keen on having and we are in focus mode, so it should just be me and Aleksandra's screens, the videos that should be viewed, but just in case you might want to turn your video off if you're wanting a bit of privacy.
Hi, Sonia.
So Aleksandra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Aleksandra, but people call me Alex. Everybody who knows me by that name. So I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 25 years now. I'm also a teacher trainer. I'm a materials writer, and I'm a great fan of graphic novels and using graphic novels in language teaching. So I don't know what else I could say about myself. It's just really great to be here and do this with Emily, because we share the same passion for comics and graphic novels. And I hope you enjoyed today's session. Yeah. It will be practical, so you will have to do something, okay? It's not going to be just talking and talking and talking.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of chat. We're going to use the annotation tools at some point, and you will be drawing at some point as well. So it's going to be lots of fun. Okay, shall I move on to... Oh, so I should probably introduce myself. So I'm Emily Bryson. I have been teaching for about 20 years, teaching English language for about 20 years. I teach at City of Glasgow College at the moment, people from refugee backgrounds, and I am a graphic facilitator, which means that I use a lot of drawings and doodles and diagrams and visuals to facilitate learning and to make learning more supportive. And so obviously graphic novels are a great way for me to build, or for everybody really, to build your visual literacy and your visual vocabulary. Graphic facilitators talk about visuals and hand-drawn icons as being part of a visual vocabulary. So one of the ways to develop that is obviously to read just as you would with, to read visuals, just as you would with reading text in a book. So that's part of the reason why I love graphic novels so much. You may also know me from National Geographic Learning's Voices series. I wrote that, and I've got a few other books out there in the ether as well. So let's get started. I know Aleksandra's got some nice ideas behind reading and visual literacy. Would you like to share those?
Yep. Okay, so my first question for you today is, and I would like you just to answer in the chat with a simple yes or no. Can you read?
I'm going to say yes, okay. I can read.
Okay, yeah.
I thought you might. So I hope I can read.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so yeah, I expected all of you to say yes, because when we talk about reading, we automatically think about reading a text. But what I would tell all of you is that you cannot read unless you can read a text and images. So we can no longer basically rely on those traditional notions of reading. You know, you sit down, you pick up a book or your Kindle or whatever, and you read words on a page or on a screen. So reading is no longer about text. It's also about images and reading images. And there is one thing that Porter said a long time ago, is that visual literacy is actually talking not about images, but talking with images. So when we talk about graphic novels and comics, we don't just read words, we read images as well. So that's why we have to change our approach to teaching reading. It is no longer about teaching our students, the letters and the sounds and how to put them together and how to read a sentence or a text, a book. It's also about combining text with images and what kind of messages our students get from that. So that's why I always say that no, we cannot read unless we can read text and images as well. Yeah. So Emily, can we move to the next slide?
Okay.
So that's why when I say that I use graphic novels in my teaching, I get a lot of, questions like, why? Graphic novels are not serious literature. And I always use this particular slide in my presentations when I talk about graphic novels and reading. And this comes from a movie. This is usually the attitude that we get from people when we talk about comics and graphic novels. They don't take them as something serious, as something that should be in our classrooms, something that belongs in our classrooms. And that's why I like to prove people wrong and tell them they do belong in our classrooms, and we can learn a lot from cartoons, from comics, from graphic novels. So what I would like you to do now in the chat, I would like you to tell me if you've ever used any graphic novels to teach. And if you have, is there a particular graphic novel that you like using with your students?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, when you were talking about visual literacy there, I was thinking about infographics. There's more and more use of infographics these days where you're reading text and images at the same time. Yeah. And then when you go around like airports, train stations, etc., even in Zoom, in this Zoom room, we can see icons. So there's the visual literacy of, for example, that chat bubble is a chat bubble. The participants are like two little blobs with a head on them. The camera is a rectangle with a little triangle beside it. So there's visual literacy there as well. And then you think about emojis too. Like we use a lot of communication in text messages, on social media, even in emails, have emojis all over the place. So yeah, it's text and images.
Yeah, always think about people, let's say, maybe even our family members, relatives, our friends who can't speak a foreign language and yet they travel to that particular country. So I remember a friend of mine who couldn't speak a word of English. She actually traveled on her own all the way to Australia. So I asked her, how did you manage all these airports? They're huge. You need to find your way around. And she said, I just looked at the picture.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Like where I can find a toilet, food, something like that, whatever I need. So it was really interesting to hear her say that. So yeah, we do rely on pictures, right? Even in situations in which we don't know the language. So yeah, they can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, they've been super helpful. The international language of iconography.
Oh yeah.
So I'm noticing in the chat there's quite a lot of people saying no, they haven't used graphic novels in which is quite interesting. So, and to define a graphic novel, how would you define a graphic novel?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask them, how they would define a graphic novel. And there's one particular name that comes up when we talk about graphic novels, and everyone assumes that Will Eisner is the one who coined the term. But actually, it's not true. It wasn't him. It was actually a journalist, Richard Kyle, who wrote this article about the future of comics back in 1964. Because at that time, comics were considered to be something that has very bad influence on the youth. Okay, encouraging them to drink and do things that they were not supposed to do. So he wrote this article, and that's where he mentions graphic novels, actually, and that's where the term graphic novel comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically when, what is a graphic novel? It's a longer comic.
Yeah.
That's
in
how
book
people
form,
usually reply to this question.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Will Eisner actually coined the term sequential art, and because he couldn't find a term for his new graphic novel, he didn't know how to call it. That's when he used the term sequential art and then graphic novel, and it became really famous, let's say. So it started spreading in those circles, about among those comic artists and graphic novelists at the time. So yeah, graphic novel is a longer comic. It's a comic book, basically.
Yeah. We're going to share
definition.
some of our favorites in about 3 slides.
Oh yes,
time, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you, why do you think we should use graphic novels in our classrooms? What do you think the benefits would be?
Okay, so people can write in the chat the benefits of using graphic novels.
Yeah, you can.
I have lots of benefits of graphic novels and drawing and visuals in general.
Okay, Lynn says help understand words in context. Yeah, getting ideas across easily, relates words to meanings more easily. Good. Creativity, very good.
Yeah,
Lessons
21st
become
century
memorable.
skill of creativity.
Supporting communication visually. Yep.
Yeah, and lessons become more memorable, exactly. So there's actually studies to show that drawing vocabulary makes it much more easier to recall than people who don't draw the vocabulary. So top tip, get your students to draw vocabulary.
Yeah. And allows for neurodiverse understanding. Exactly, because some say that graphic novels are not linguistically rich, but actually they are, because you don't have a lot of space to write words and sentences. So graphic novelists and comic artists, they really need to choose words carefully and how many words they need to combine them together with the images to get their messages across. So actually the vocabulary in graphic novels and comics can be quite challenging. So, we can read in a lot of like articles and research that graphic novels can be used with struggling readers, and that they're a good way to teach reading and reading comprehension to struggling readers. But actually, I would disagree with that, because I believe that because of this richness and high level vocabulary, graphic novels might not be appropriate for struggling readers, or you would have to use graphic novels that are at a lower level. There are some graphic novels that are recommended for struggling readers, and some that are that have been written specifically for them. So as teachers, we need to be really careful which graphic novels we select for our classroom, because they can be quite challenging and our students might struggle.
Yeah, there are great readers out there, aren't there? I'm sure our library has graded readers from some of the main publishers that have been graded to whatever level on the KEFR, on the CEFR.
Yeah, exactly. So if you move to the next slide, it really says it all, why we need to use comics and graphic novels in our teaching. Because we need to have workforce, as they call it here, and citizenry that is comfortable with multiple literacies. So that's why I said we can no longer rely on the traditional literacies, because nowadays we have some new ones, and that's something that we need to work on with our students in our classrooms. So it's impossible to work only with text. We need to include something additional, because we're all bombarded by images on a daily basis, right? Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, any social media platform, it's all about images because it's easier to read them than to read a whole page online, for example. So that's at least one argument, as suggested here, why we need to have them in our classrooms.
Yeah, it really reduces processing load as well if you've got images, like fewer, less text and more images as well.
Yeah, cognitive load. We talk about it a lot, and graphic novels and comics are perfect. They're excellent to reduce that cognitive load. So our students can understand the messages much easier if they see an image and a text, they put them together and they understand. A lot of, let's say, dyslexic students, of course, they struggle with reading, but graphic novels are excellent for them because there isn't a lot of text and there are more images, or even reading those textless graphic novels and comics. So it's only images. And you can still have an amazing lesson, for example, based on just images coming from a graphic novel or a comic.
So I've got a few other benefits here. So basically, since starting my graphic facilitation journey a few years ago, I have discovered more and more benefits to using graphic facilitation, so that's simple doodles and diagrams and images and visuals and visual thinking, etc., in language teaching, and using graphic novels as well. So it's fun. I think as soon as students see a comic, they like it and they're intrigued by it. It's great for critical thinking. You can just give them a whole load of pictures and maybe get them to think about what text might be added to it, what's happening in this picture. It's really great for memory, as we discussed. It's nice and relaxing if you teach learners who have mental health problems or who are maybe coming to class with a lot of things going on. It's a nice way to ease them into the lesson and make their lessons feel less stressful. It's great for creativity and communicating a point in a clear way, reducing processing load, as we've mentioned. And supporting literacy. It's multi-sensory. It's lots of different things. So
and they relate to like subjects across curriculum. So you can teach, for example, English, but you can also teach history or social studies through graphic novels, even biology or math. So they're extremely flexible when it comes to, let's say, age and linguistic competence and reading habits. So they're really, really useful. And as I said, I think that they're just underestimated, and a lot of teachers just don't know enough about them to include them in their teaching. And I would just like to see that more, around the world, more graphic novels and comics introduced. Because as you mentioned, there are so many benefits, and we're just, I think, sometimes afraid to explore something new like that. We think that we need to be artists to be using graphic novels and comics, but you don't have to be an artist.
We absolutely do not.
That's not the point, exactly.
So like if you see the pictures on my slides, they're part of a visual vocabulary that I've learned just in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And it's kind of like learning to read and write in new words. I've learned how to communicate using rectangles and lines and circles, really. And it's definitely not art. Like there's nothing artistic about that. It's rough and ready. And even on my whiteboard, it's even messier. So that's the beauty of it. It's like accessible drawings, really. So I'll share some of these are, so when we started doing this session, I thought I would get all my graphic novels out, and these are my favorites, these are the ones that I haven't lent to people. So actually I now have the Sapiens one, and I've got the first Sapiens one, which is Orange, which is a graphic novel, which is about Yuval Noah Harari's story of evolution that he wrote, and it's been made into a comic. So I tried to read it, and then I tried to listen to it as an audiobook, and I just couldn't focus on it. So then I got the comic version, and it was great. It made it really accessible. Like, it's really important information in it. And then this one at the top is called Rain. So if you're into, it's about climate change and the effects it has. I think it's on the Yorkshire Dales. And this one, Persepolis, is about a woman growing up in Iran and moving to Europe and talking about freedom and the freedoms that women have less of in Iran, and which is still very poignant today. I think it was written in the 80s. You've read it as well, haven't you, Aleksandra?
Yeah. I used it in a project that I did here on graphic novels, and Persepolis is an amazing story.
Yeah.
It's an autobiography, basically, and you can learn so much from it. A lot of my students learned a lot about the revolution at the time in Iran, and what it meant to grow up in that particular situation, how to adjust to a completely new life in Europe. So yeah, it's a great graphic novel, and it covers a lot of different topics.
Yeah, and I think my students can really relate to it because they've got that kind of dual citizenship, kind of, I'm European, but I'm also Iranian. I've lived here for a certain amount of time, settling in a new country, resettling, change different cultures, that kind of thing. The other one that's really great is The Roles We Play by Saba Khan, which is about a Muslim woman who grew up in, is from Britain, and the different roles that she plays. So she's an architect, she's a mother, she's a sister, she's a daughter. She wore the hijab and then she stopped wearing the hijab. She's a Muslim woman, but she's also an artist. She's all the different roles that she plays in life and how she adapts to them all. It's really interesting look at life. Loads of different graphic novels. I recommend searching for them all and trying not to get too carried away. Illegal by, I think it's Ewan Colfer and Andrew Donkin, is about a journey from Africa to, I think, to UK or to France, and basically their journey of how they got here via people trafficking, boats, etc. So a kind of refugee story of moving. The Stars Are Scattered, I think you recommended this one to me, actually, is about life of two little boys on a refugee camp as well.
Yeah, those are stories close to me because I'm a refugee myself. I was born and raised in Sarajevo in Bosnia. So I was a teenager when I became a refugee. So yeah, those stories are really close to me because I have a lived experience of some of the things. So that's why I say that when using graphic novels, you can get so much out of those stories. And that's why I think it's important to kind of spread the word about them. Yeah.
And then in the bottom left corner, we've also got like two LGBT books here. So that Fine by Ria Ewing is basically a look at her, or is it him, her, they? I think they actually have about gender and they change gender and the exploration of who they are and why they are that, and different responses to it, and people getting the pronouns wrong, and people not feeling comfortable. And it's really a deep dive into trans rights and journeys. Really, it's really interesting.
I think that graphic novels and comics can help so much in kind of bringing these sensitive topics into our classrooms, if we want to, right? Because I feel it's important that we talk about everything with our students if they're willing to talk about certain things. So yeah, graphic novels and comics can be an excellent way of actually talking about, without triggering anyone in any way. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, like Mouse, Maus was about the Holocaust. It's a really
Yeah.
famous graphic novel, and there's really some dark scenes in it, but because it's in colorful, bright picture form, it's kind of
Yeah.
desensitized in a way, which allows people the space to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, they cover
Sure.
like history as well, like this Pablo Picasso, Vincent.
Yeah.
It's a great way,
History
like
of
the
art.
Sapiens, the world history, like yeah, loads of different topics you can use. Okay. So I want to talk a bit about one of my visual language heroes, and there's a guy called Neil Cohn. I'm going to write it in the chat actually. Neil, Neilkohn, and he's got this website called visuallanguagelab.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Visual Linguist. And every time I visit his site, I go down a little rabbit hole because I just find it so fascinating. He's done so much research into visual language and comics and yeah, like how panels are laid out, and like, for example, like this swirly circle around a head, different how emotions are expressed. I've got lots of other examples coming up of how you can look at visual language in the classroom, like this wiggly line for audio, arrows to show movement, speech bubbles to show speech, emojis, and he really looks at them in depth, and he shares his research into them. And I think he did some research about the grammar of comics, and how if you add like a blank panel, like just a plain white panel, it's kind of like having a comma or a full stop within your comic. And then there's things like the layout of comics. Like comics generally go from top to bottom in a kind of Z shape. So I'll put the annotate on there so that you can see that. So yeah, they normally get your reading direction goes from left to right.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we as teachers, if we want to introduce graphic novels, right, into our classrooms, into our teaching, we need to make sure we teach our students how to actually read graphic novels.
Yeah.
You know, what is the panel? What is a gutter? You know, as you said, how do you read them, from which side, etc. So yeah, that's also one part of it, teaching them how to actually read graphic novels.
Yeah, and which order to read them in. Yeah, so there's a whole, like, you can create a whole dictionary of vocabulary of graphic novels, like speech bubble, caption. The gutter's the bit in between the panels, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the panel is this kind of the actual
box.
image. Yeah. and then these lines here, these are like action lines, they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things that you can do with them. Even teaching this basic language of comics and graphic novels.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean that slide. So yeah, so when I was creating the advert for this session, I kind of wanted to use some of the common visual language. So for example, we've got these little action lines here to show that somebody's a bit surprised. Maybe they've moved their head quite quickly. And then they've got stars and love hearts and maybe a little idea light bulb. They've got their eyebrows raised and their mouth is open a bit because they're surprised. And then these little lines here show that there's light. So there's a whole load of language involved in just those little lines and stars. And then I found out what this was called. This is an impact star. So you use this quite a lot in like superhero comics, for example, to show like the impact or surprise or something that big has happened. And then you've got the thought bubble to show that you're thinking about something, exclamation marks, question marks, punctuation can be used quite a lot in visual language. And then the emotions, little wiggly line for downturned, downwards eyebrows to show that somebody's perplexed or sad. And then a little thought cloud, a cloud to show that you're on cloud 9, for example. And then happy visuals, rainbows and suns and stars can be quite happy, can't they?
So see, that's why I said we cannot read unless we can read images, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure whether to draw now or will we continue and then I'll maybe draw at the end and bring it all together.
Whatever you want, Emily. I think that it's all up to you or our participants. Maybe they want to do something.
Okay, so yeah, if you would like to draw now, just put in the chat yes, and I'll get ready to get the. Well, maybe just I'll go for it, and then yeah, I know we've got a lot to get through, so we'll do a bit of drawing of this particular language now. So let me just
okay. Yes, please.
Yeah. And I'll get okay. I think I need to spotlight myself, don't I? To make it big.
Good.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just using a visualizer for this. If you want to with your class at any point for drawing, if you've got an online class. Okay, so the first little person that we saw was quite excited. So a lot of what I draw is just basically circles and rectangles. I'm going to use a pen that actually works. And then this body shape is quite neutral because it's kind of gender neutral body shape, really. And so the eyebrows, if you've got raised eyebrows, it means you're a little bit surprised. And then you can be surprised happy with a big smile. You can add a little love heart to show that you're feeling that you love it. You can add star. Another way to draw a star is just by doing this. Oops. Another way to draw a star is by doing this. And then the light bulb. Light bulbs, I talk about light bulbs quite a lot because they're quite a versatile icon. You can use them for creativity, critical thinking, ideas. Fill me in if you can think of any more. Feel free to add more in the chat if you can think of other ways to use light bulbs. So yeah, circle, and then an M, and then a Z. And you can add little motion or energy lines to show that it's switched on. And then in my picture, there was some little lines to show surprise and excitement. And then the mobile phone was all lit up. So you can add little lines there too. And it just needs to give the idea. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's not arty. When I'm drawing this in class, the students don't want to be watching me creating artworks. They want it to be quick and they want it to be there as soon as possible. So it's not about creating art. It's about another way of communicating. Very much visual language. Okay, to draw an excited person, you do the same body shape. And actually the thing with creating a body shape rather than a stick person is that this doesn't get caught up in being words or text. Okay, and then you're drawing a couple of little upside down V's, and then add some feet. And then your hands are going up the way because you're super excited. And your hands can just be little O's. They don't need to be actual hands because hands are really difficult to draw. And then you can add a couple of stars. I'm going to use, I need to find a pen that works properly. I go through a lot of black pens. Then you can add a couple of stars for the eyes. And then a big, happy, smiley face.
This is amazing, Emily, because I'm terrible at drawing and my students always make fun of my drawing.
Oh, my students make fun of my drawings too.
You know, I think this would be so much better if I do something like this in my classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say like feel the fear and draw anyway. Like it's about communicate. If I draw in class and it's an accessible thing and it's not intimidating, then the students are more likely to gain confidence from drawing as well. So yeah, my students, I kind of did some in-action research a couple of years ago and didn't ask them to, didn't encourage them actively to draw in class, but I just drew. And then slowly over time, they just started copying me and just drawing in their notebooks anyway, because it kind of made it a nice welcoming space where they felt comfortable to do that. So yeah, I feel like just do it. So Ivana's just said, I'm still kindergarten level drawing. And I have to admit, I am too. When I did my course in graphic facilitation, one of my friends said to me, so basically you've paid a whole load of money to learn how to draw like a child. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I did. But I didn't take it that way. Okay, so for somebody worried, so the eyebrows here are, somebody excited, are raised. And actually you can, like, if you play around and get the eyebrows wrong, it can be quite hilarious. You can have a completely different expression. Copying emojis from your mobile phone is quite a good way. And then like a just little wiggly line. So that could be worried. And then this person had a thought cloud. And then a couple of a bit bolder exclamation marks. And then I think I had FOMO or something like that.
Yeah, FOMO. Yeah.
Oh, I've gone over the lines. One of the things I was, when I was looking at Neil Cohen's site, I was reminded of explosions. So for like big news or something, you can have an explosion like this, like a cloud. And then
it's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he talks about fight cloud. He talks about fight clouds as well. So these kind of, you can add like a little hand coming out of the fight cloud, or maybe two little hands. I think in Asterix there was quite a lot of fight clouds, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, I think so.
And then you can add some little motion marks as well, that kind of thing. Okay, so I think that's about all the most exciting things covered. So if you want to show your drawings, go for it. Feel free to turn on your screens. I will unpin myself so that you can do that. But if you don't want to, because it is going on YouTube, then please don't feel you have to.
Yeah. If you don't want to share your art with the rest of the world.
Yeah. But I would absolutely love you to. I would say feel the fear and share it anyway.
Yeah.
People always respond really well to it, regardless of like for example, my very first sketch notes, I remember people being like, wow, they're amazing. And now when I look back at them, I'm like, oh, really? But I think there's a nice people enjoy it. So
yeah. I think it's a lot of fun, drawing, but since I'm not so good at it, but I still have fun actually. Because it's fun for my students to make fun of me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of enjoy
welcoming atmosphere.
Yeah.
Laugh at your teacher. And
yeah. Well, that I think that makes us more human.
Exactly.
Because they always think about us as, these, I don't know what we are to them, but we're not like real people. So I think that when they see us in a situation in which we are not good at something, it makes us a little bit more human, like, oh, teachers cannot do everything.
Yeah, exactly. and when they produce artwork that is really artwork as well, that is lovely to see their skills. And I think for a lot of my students, they feel like a lot of my students, I think they have this feeling that when they come to Scotland, that like they were maybe doctors or engineers or nurses, or they had all these other jobs, and then they come here and then they're maybe not allowed to Scotland, and they're maybe not allowed to work. But they've got all these skills, they've got all these talents, and letting those talents out by drawing can be a really lovely vent and to show off their skills and develop new ones as well.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's why they say like coloring is also good for adults. anti-stress
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, drawing, coloring, it can be really helpful when you're dealing with a stressful situation, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, shall we show some examples of talk about activities? So I'll show okay, so this is one of the first ever comics. So do you know if you have annotation tools, if you can see you're in the Zoom room, you should be able to see you are viewing Emily Bryson's screen. It's the green bar at the top. And if you go to the drop-down menu beside it, you will see annotation tools or annotate. And then there's a T for text, which means that you can draw on the screen. So, oh no, if I draw on it, it changes the slide. Hopefully it won't. No. Okay, so I can't draw on it, but you can. If you annotate, and you can add your ideas. If you haven't managed to figure out annotation tools, then you can add in the chat. What are your ideas? How would you use this in class? This is one of my favorite Calvin and Hobbes comics that I used. I think I've been using it since about 2007 in class because it always gets really nice discussions going, especially with my adult learners, because usually there's quite a few of them that smoke or have been trying to give up smoking and have different ideas about how to stop smoking or aspects of parenting are brought in with this as well. Oh yeah, lovely, tidy your room, exactly. Great. I love what's happening in that slide. I'm dead. These are lovely. So yeah, one of the things that you can do with this kind of cartoon is to fill in, take the blanket all out and then get students to add their own ideas as a kind of prediction task.
Yeah, it's really good for predictions and like critical thinking, right? Because they need to be able to critically look at images and think about what they could mean and how they're all connected.
Yeah,
it's great.
Okay, I love what's happening over here. Minty, what is this? Oh yeah, do you remember cigarette machines? That's like, I mean, that's how old this cartoon is. I guess there's a little bit of history in this cartoon as well, this comic.
See, I told you can teach history through cartoons and comics and graphic novels.
Yeah.
And it's really good for grammar. Like you can ask them to use a particular grammar structure to fill in the blanks. Or particular, I don't know, vocabulary that you want them to practice, revise, etc.
Yeah, and it's good for reported speech as well. So you could get them to put the text. You could give them examples of, for example, past perfect, present simple, and then get them to have it as a reported speech lesson. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to clear all the annotations. So these are some of my ideas. So you could use it to talk about smoking, predict the text, read the full comic strip, and have a question and answer session about it. Role play it, or you could role play it with pronunciation as well, and practice things. You practice these sounds just for fun, like yeep, and gasp. And you can talk about, this is another part of visual language actually, it's the way the font or the typeface is used here. And the color of his face is completely changed. He's got smoke coming out his mouth. Obviously, doesn't really look like that, so it's quite comedy, but that's more. And then these little motion lines here as well to show that he's kind of fainted a little bit. You can get them to retell the story, and you can use it like giving opinions, giving advice, that kind of thing as well. Any other ideas that you've got, Aleksandra? Has anybody got any other ideas in the chat? If you can add any other ideas of ways to use it in the chat, that would be great. This particular one is available. I typed it into Twitter yesterday or a couple of days ago and just put Calvin and Hobbes smoking, and it comes up on Twitter, on the Calvin and Hobbes Twitter feed if you want it. if you want to find it. In fact, I have it here. Can I copy and paste it? I can. Okay, so it's
Yeah, I
now
think we
in the
can.
chat. If you're on Twitter,
Yeah.
you'll be able to access it if you want to use it in class. Okay, yeah, feel free to add any more ideas in the chat. Ways of parenting, exactly. Yeah, is this a good idea to parent this way to get people to stop talking? Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea, Zarina. Any other ideas for how to use?
You can also talk about like friendship.
Yeah.
You know, are friends supposed to stop you from doing something that they think is wrong, for example? Yeah,
Yeah.
just like ways of parenting, ways of being a good friend.
And present, you just made me think of conditionals. So like, would
If
you,
you do this,
yeah, if your friend did this, would you?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we could use conditionals here definitely to practice
Yeah.
different types.
Yeah. Feel free to experimenting with the way we learn. Yeah. Yeah, learning from experience as well and from experimentation. That's a very good point.
Yeah. You could do that chain story with conditionals. Like if they buy cigarettes, they will smoke. If they smoke, they will, etc. So they can make a whole kind of chain of sentences based on the panel from a comic. Yeah.
That's a lovely idea. Great. So yeah, loads of things that you can do with stories. Okay. Oh yeah, make-believe comics where the students become a character and scenes themselves, of course. Yes. So yeah, you can create all the scenes. There's quite a lot of different apps that you can use for creating your own comics and animations and things like that as well.
Yeah.
I think Nick Peachy has quite a lot in his feeds.
Well, you can use Canva. It has comic templates, so you can easily create your own comic. I create comics, for example, for when I need to introduce, let's say, a new grammar structure. So I create my own comic with that grammar structure and we work on it. And in that way, I basically teach grammar without teaching grammar.
Amazing.
No.
That's cool. I didn't realize Canva can do everything, can't it?
Yeah.
It is brilliant. Okay, I'll show you just one more and then so this is another comic that because buying graphic novels can be a bit addictive. I have a whole pile. I brought them all. They're all lying all over the floor right beside me here. And they can be a bit expensive, but actually there's websites and apps that you can go to that are free. So for example, Webtoon has lots and lots and lots of comics, graphic novels that are all online. This Heartstopper one, I think it's been made into a Netflix series, and it's basically about two boys coming out and their journey and falling in love. And there's more visual. I love this visual language here with the. Hold on, let's go back to annotate. I'll get the spotlight. So yeah, we've got this. So that Webtoons here. We've got the what do you call these, exclamation marks and emojis to show emotions, and then we've got these lovely boom booms, the kind of onomatopoeia, the noises and the speech bubbles and the motion, more motion lines here. I particularly love this picture. So basically this is him telling his mum that this is him coming out. This is a big scene for his life-changing event. And there's this kind of space left in it to kind of convey the silence and the emotion. And I just think it's a really beautiful image. And it's so, I mean, yeah, an image really does tell 1,000 words, doesn't it? In this particular, in many instances, but yeah, I particularly love this one. It's great.
Very powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so that's I'll show you some more free tunes, free comics in just a second. But yeah, here's one, Dark Souls. So this is for
Well, yeah.
Alexandra. I've been intrigued about this slide for a good few days
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So actually, Dark Souls is not a comic. It's not a graphic novel. It's a video game. It's actually PS game. And this is a game that my nephew loves. I mean, he is just obsessed with it. And if you just kind of do a Google search, you will see that a lot of video games that have been turned into graphic novels and graphic novels turned into video games. So I just wanted to show you how video games also, just like graphic novels, that they do have a place in our language classrooms. Because, Emily, can you move to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Because this is
sorry.
a character that was created by my nephew. Because based on Dark Souls, he's now creating his own video game. He's writing like the whole scenario thing, but he's also creating a comic. Unfortunately, he couldn't take pictures of his comic because of copyright. Can you imagine that? And he's just turned 12.
Wow.
He doesn't want to share it with the world yet, but he kindly allowed me to share these characters. So this is one of the characters that is based on the game. Emily, if you move to the next slide, this is another one. Okay.
That's cool.
So I wanted to show you also how he names these characters. So if you look at the words, you can see that it's linguistically, the name is linguistically rich. Blair, the corrupt tyrant. Okay, now if you move to the next slide, Emily, this is the description, a very short description of his video game and of his comic. So this is all the vocabulary that my nephew picked up through video games and through reading comics online. And he also, of course, he's fluent in English, by the way. But this is a very high level of English. I don't think that any other 12-year-old, okay, living here could actually do this. And this is all, as I said, because of the video games that he plays. So his vocabulary is so rich and his sentence construction is just amazing. So if you want to kind of engage your students, what you could do is you could ask them to actually turn some of their favorite video games into comics or even graphic novels, right? So they can do a whole project during the year creating this graphic novel by adding characters and text together. So it's a perfect way to combine video games with graphic novels and with language learning.
Yeah. And if you make it into a project, you can use all sorts of different grammatical structures, vocabulary.
Exactly.
You can really see it developing from maybe quite minimal English to something really very rich.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's why I said it really, the vocabulary can be at a very high level in graphic novels. And that's why a lot of students can actually benefit greatly from graphic novels, from reading graphic novels. Their vocabulary will definitely improve, and of course, other structures, grammar more specifically, because the grammar that we have in graphic novels is the grammar that you would hear in everyday speech. So it's spoken language, it's spoken English. It's not that, textbook English.
Yeah.
So
natural, authentic.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to give you an idea how you can put together some of the things that our students love. And if you ask your students, what do you like? Okay, it would usually be, I don't know, Netflix and music and video games. So you can easily combine video games with comics and graphic novels and ask them to do something that can be very engaging and very motivating for them, and still very useful for them in terms of learning some new things. Okay, so don't go to the next slide, Emily, because
Okay.
now we're going to do an activity. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you can stop sharing actually.
Oh, great.
And if
Okay.
you open a whiteboard, if anybody just wants to draw on the Zoom whiteboard, or if you have a pen and paper or pencil and paper around somewhere, you can use that. Then you can share your work with us. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I would like you to take, as I said, a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, and I would like you to draw 4 panels, okay, 4 little squares. And I'm going to read a text for you. It's a story, it's a book, it comes from a book. And as I read, I would like you to pay attention to the images that you can see in your mind. And then I would like you to draw those images in these 4 panels. So you can use the whiteboard and Zoom if you want. It can be collaborative work, which is perfectly fine. Or you can simply draw on your own on a piece of paper. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm like, oh, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so I'll start reading, okay? And then let's see what you can see in your mind. Okay, I'll just read the first chapter, okay? Good. Are you ready? You wanna hear a story?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so I'll try and read it, the way I would read it for my students, like dramatic reading. Okay. So chapter 1. Zoya was sitting next to her window, looking at the dark clouds accumulating above the house. Oh no, it's going to rain again. The summer had just begun, but it seemed it still hadn't arrived in her place. It rained almost every day, although it was already mid-June. Zoya hated rain. Her brother, Luca, on the other hand, enjoyed it because everyone was inside when it rained and he could roam the woods near their house all alone. When it rained, the woods were quiet, with no disturbance from the animals or whatever lived in the woods, and he stayed there all day just exploring. Zoya thought her brother was weird because he always talked about strange creatures living in the woods, creatures he had never seen before, but he just knew they were there. Zoya always laughed at him when he talked about that, inventing stories and trying to convince her they were real. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared across the sky, followed by a thunderous sound. Another day locked in the house, Zoya murmured to herself. Oh my God, she screamed and stood up. She saw a strange dark figure standing on the edge of the woods looking in her direction. It was tall, with a small body, long legs, and long arms. It had something that looked like a black cape around its shoulders and a huge hat that was covering its whole face. The only thing Zoya could see was its mouth that was moving as if it was trying to speak. Zoya closed her eyes, thinking, you're just imagining things. There's no one there. Mental note to myself, go to the optician to get my eyes checked. She opened her eyes, and this time the dark figure was waving at her, inviting her to follow it. Luca! She screamed. Her brother came running into the room. What is it? There, I'll see at the edge of the woods, I tried to explain. Luca ran to the window and looked outside. It's waving at us to follow it. Are you crazy? I asked her brother, trying to stop her body that had started to shake uncontrollably. I'm not going out there. We don't know what that thing is. Yes, but we could find out, said her brother, putting his raincoat on. Luca, wait. Don't go outside, please. Mom and Dad are going to kill me if something happens to you. Zoya tried to reason with him. I'm off, Luca said, and stepped outside. Okay, so that was the story. Okay, Emily has something going on here. Okay,
Yeah,
I can
and someone
see
else
some
has something
other
going on as
things.
well.
Yeah,
Who's the other
good.
brave
Okay.
person that got their pens out? Quite hard to draw with a mouse,
Yeah, it is.
but it's fun.
So, not anything. Okay, you can turn on your camera, show it to us, or you can take a photo with your phone and share it, attach it and share it in the chat here in Zoom. Or you can just describe your panels to us. What have you got in each panel? You can also write in the chat or turn on your mic and tell us.
Cool. Will I stop sharing the whiteboard?
Yeah. Okay. So would anybody like to share with us what you've drawn?
You can also share it in socials later if you like.
Yeah.
Oh, have I had that? I just noticed that I've had my...
Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
My copy of Fine. I'll go back to my web camera so you can actually see me.
Okay, good. Now we can see you. So anyone brave enough to share their art with us?
No, don't think so.
No? Yeah.
Feel free to share it later on socials or just send us a little
if you want, or send
we
it.
would very much like to see it. It was a beautiful story. Very atmospheric. What was that story?
Yeah, well, actually, so if you share the slide, it's a reader that I actually wrote as part of my MA thesis on materials development and reading comprehension. Yeah, and I use it quite often to illustrate that any text, okay, even if you read something that is about science, let's say, it can be turned into a comic or a graphic novel, as I said. All you need to do is ask your students to draw the 4 panels and then draw inside these panels. So this is the strategy of visualization. And it's so simple to use it, because I love using it, because if you have students with learning difficulties, like dyslexic students who really don't want to read, don't like reading, you can check their comprehension by asking them to draw whatever you've read to them or whatever they heard, let's say, if you play a recording. So it's excellent for them. I also have an autistic student in one of my classes, and he absolutely loves drawing. So that's how I know that he understood what I read to the whole class or what we listened to. So as I said, it's a very simple activity. You can do it with any text. You just need to make sure that they understand that they need to draw the panels first, and then they draw inside the panels. And you can turn this into a speaking activity. They can describe their panels orally, or you can turn it into a writing activity, and they can write even what the characters are saying in each panel, or maybe a little bit of narrative, like narration in the corners of the panels, so they can be the narrator in that case. Yeah,
so much
a very
you can do
simple
with
activity.
That for very little prep.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't, for example, if you notice that your students are getting tired or bored, just do this, okay? Read a very simple text. They turn it into a comic.
Love it.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you want the keepers slide, or what slide would you like?
So this is actually the cover page that was designed by a friend of mine. And as I said, I use the keepers all the time with my students, and we exploit it for different things. Yeah. Great. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. Okay, combine your text with comics and drawing.
Brilliant. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to show you another few of my favorite comics, and then another few ideas to use with them, really. So one of my favorite, so this one's another freebie one. So this Tiny View is an app that you can get, which has lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different comics. And actually, she's really great to follow on socials as well, Gemma Correll. And she talks a lot about anxiety, mental health. Like, for example, this one, on a good day, clumsy old me, oh well. And then on a bad day, no, this is the end of the world. Why am I so clumsy? I'm the worst. And I think we've all been there. We can all relate to it. It's all very relatable content about imposter syndrome and not wanting to go out and social anxiety and things that we've all experienced at some point. And I think it's a good way of getting students talking. I think they're really good discussion starters. So what would you do on a good day? You could, again, fill in the blanks, but you could get them to talk about how do you feel on a good day? How do you feel on a bad day? Have you responded in this way? Have you ever responded in the way on the left or the right? How would you normally respond? How would you respond if it was one of your children that had done this, for example? Anything you'd like to add about this particular comic? Or
I just feel that, we talk about mental health a lot nowadays, especially after the pandemic. And again, it's one of those topics that it's not easy to talk about mental health with our students. And this is the perfect way to talk about it,
Yeah.
And some of our, I think that most of us, even adults, but our students, they just don't like talking about their emotions and their mental health. And it's very important. And through comics, drawing how they feel, it can actually help a lot. And it helps us teachers to learn about them and, what they're struggling with at the moment. So I think it's a perfect to talk about anxiety, to talk about, anything that worries them, basically. Yeah. And it's so simple. It's not complicated. So
and it's available online for free.
It's available online for free.
And then they can follow it as well, and it's quite a nice thing for them on their social media feeds. It's a nice way of them being able to read in English on their socials as well. Quite a light way of doing that. So it kind of, when I read that, it reminded me of my activity that I like to do about my inner angel and my inner troll. So this is a well-being activity that I like to do with the students. You basically draw an inner troll, and then you draw an inner angel. And I don't think we've really got time really to do it at the moment. But basically you draw an inner troll and then you draw an inner angel. And then in the inner troll thought cloud, you put all the mean things that your brain says to you. And then in the other thought cloud, you put all the nice things that your inner brain says to you. And then afterwards, if you've done it on 2 bits of paper, like, get them to do it on a different piece of paper. And then you basically take your inner troll and then you rip up your inner troll, because you don't want to listen to your inner troll. You only want to listen to your inner angel. And it's a nice physical way of getting them to think about turning off their negative thoughts and trying only to listen to their inner angel, who says that you can do things and says that, yes, of course you can have that extra chocolate, and that of course that everything's going to be fine, etc. So,
that's an excellent activity.
If you want there's actually one of my le.com blog posts. So if you go to le.com or if you search for le.com Emily Bryson Inner Angel, it will come up if you ever want a reminder of how to use it.
Good.
So, and then the next slide is a beautiful graphic organizer, which I'm a big fan of graphic organizers. Do you want to tell us a bit more about this?
So this was actually something that was created by one of my students about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I still use it. I have her permission. So I use this to help my students organize their thoughts and ideas about a story or a graphic novel that we've read. So they need to go through, all the parts of this graphic organizer, but then they have this part here that is actually the focus of, let's say, the lesson that day. So they need to come up with an alternative solution, alternative ending to a story to a graphic novel. And this is quite interesting because, you know, we all think differently. We never have the same exact ideas. We can have similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see and read all of these different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
On a certain topic, on a certain event. So this is something that we used for Persepolis, for example. So we
Okay.
wanted to have an alternative ending to Persepolis, and there were some really amazing ideas there. So it's an easy activity, and it's something that you can actually give for homework. So they can do this on their own, and then when they come to class, next time you can discuss different endings to the same graphic novel in my case, because I use this with graphic novels. Yeah, so this is something that can be used for different levels as well, because our students, they don't have to elaborate, you know, on every single thing. So it can be just some notes that they put into these little clouds, and still you can see how they think, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I really love using it. It's simple, but it's interesting, right? I mean, visually interesting. So it
Yeah,
just kind of
exactly.
engages my students immediately just by looking at it. Yeah.
And what I love about graphic organizers actually is that you can use them with all levels, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and you can use them in lots of different ways. So like this
Mm-hmm.
one you could use to read a book and then or a graphic novel and then write about that particular graphic novel or book, or you could also use it to create your own.
Yeah.
Or to share an
Mm-hmm.
idea that you've got. It can be it's so adaptable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Love
true.
them.
Yeah, that's why I say there's a lot of flexibility in using comics and graphic novels, and in different activities that we create based on them. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
lots of
visuals in general
flexibility.
can be very
Oh yeah,
adaptable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is another this is one of my graphic organizers. So I mentioned this actually in the little course that I've got with Claire Hayward, where we talk about graphic organizers, which is available on my website, emilybrysonelt.com. And it's a question and answer. Basically, you're given for any texts or any listening activities. I often find, especially for listening activities, that there's quite a lot of information to process. So students are really busy trying to listen to something, and they're also trying to read and trying to think and trying to get notes down at the same time. But if you have a graphic organizer that only has 5 questions in it, then that's instant processing loads reduction.
Yeah.
And for graphic novels, it's perfect because you can read the graphic novel and then in the end ask those 5 questions, 5 key questions. Who are the characters? Where did they go? When did they do it? What did they do and why? And it could work really well
Yeah.
for your story about keepers, for example. So there was a brother and a sister and a dark figure
Right.
in the forest. Where were they in the forest and at home? When
Yeah.
was it? I think it was nighttime, wasn't it?
Yeah. Afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happened? Oh, we're not sure. They might have gone into the forest. Why did it happen?
Yeah.
His sister was really intrigued to go into the forest. So yeah,
Yeah.
and you can use it for so many things. And again, you can use it for helping them to plan out
Yeah.
their own stories as well.
I think sometimes as teachers we get carried away and we think everything needs to be so elaborate and detailed, you know, and everything needs to be planned perfectly. But actually having something simple such as this graphic organizer, it can be more fun and it can be more beneficial than anything else. You know, like a whole lesson plan that you write with all the little details, and this is how I'm going to do it, and you know the time that it needs to be done, etc. But actually just giving them this to our students can be more motivating and more engaging than that, you know, to follow all those steps. So just give them this, and then I personally believe this brings out a lot at, you know, in terms of critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication. You know, this is more useful than a lot of other things that we use as teachers.
Yeah, and then maybe took a whole lot longer to create. Like, I mean, you would just need a whiteboard or a visualizer and a digital pen,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
yeah, and
it's
then
true.
just draw. And those icons that are drawn there, the who is basically just an N with an O on top of it. The where's just a rectangle with a little kind of rectangle with a triangle at the end. The when, I love that when. I use that circle with a little L shape in it so many times for telling them this is what time the class starts, for writing, use it for,
so
for
simple.
scheduling, for talking about present tense, past tense, etc., etc.
Very simple, but very
Super
useful.
flexible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm aware of the time and I'm hoping to squeeze in a bit of drawing, but I'm thinking that shall we do your slide about the story first? And then go back if we've got time. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So so this is one of the, I don't know if you've ever tried any of the thinking routines that are part of Project Zero from Harvard University on visible thinking. So this is one of the thinking routines, and it's called Unveiling Stories. And I use it a lot with graphic novels. And this image is from Kindred, graphic novel that is based on Olivia Butler's novel, Kindred. So these are very simple questions. You don't have to use all 5 of them. You can only use, let's say, 2 or 3. So my students need to look carefully at this particular page, and they have 60 seconds to do that. And then they work in groups and they answer these questions. So what is the story? What is the human story? What is the world story? What is the new story? And what is the untold story? So if you look at this image, can you just pop in the chat, what is the story here? What do you think?
I really like the idea of what is the story, the humans, the different angles on a story.
Exactly.
And there's so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so
I've got a graphic, I've got a visual template right here.
Good.
I can show you after.
Graphic novels are excellent for teaching about perspectives, different perspectives. So what do you think the story is here?
Well, something terrible has happened to poor Alice.
Yeah.
People are upset about it.
And people's night out turns into a tragic. Okay. Maybe an accident, a fire. Yeah. Good.
I'm wondering if the guy carrying Alice has a lot of money and maybe a landowner.
Yeah. So the novel is about slavery. Okay. So you can actually do
another big
so many
topic
things
covered by
yes, exactly. So you can do so many things with this graphic novel and with activities such as this one, because you really want to dig deep into this graphic novel because there are so many things happening there. Yeah. Okay. Perhaps she's losing his child. Yeah, Zarina, good. So quite often my students think about what is the relationship between this man and Alice, because he's obviously rich. So he might be a slave owner. She's obviously, right, slave. So what is the relationship there? Because he's so concerned about her. So yeah, quite a lot of things going on in just this particular image, this page from this graphic novel. So graphic novels are all about digging deeper, asking questions, getting our students to think. So yeah, So that's why I think graphic novels need to be part of our teaching, because if we want our students to think critically about the world, we need to allow them to think critically in our classrooms. Show them how they can question things and not take things for granted and at their face value. So yeah. Okay, so as I said, very simple. It's a thinking routine, and you can do a lot with it in your classroom.
Yeah, another thing that you can do a lot with yeah. So I'm getting a sense of a theme: global topics, minimal prep,
exactly.
Lots of exploitation, lots of activities. Yeah,
it's true.
Great.
Yeah.
While you were showing me that, I'll go back to my visualizer, because I kind of visualized a visual template when you were saying that. So when I was thinking let me just spotlight this again and turn the light back on. So yeah, you could create your own graphic organizer about this. So what's the story? We quite often in graphic facilitation, we use containers, and containers are basically just big drawing icons, really big. So this could be the story. You can you can draw that on the whiteboard and get students to come up and put post-it notes with their ideas on it. Or you could get them to copy that into their notebooks and add what the story was. You can do it the right way around rather than being squint as well. And then the human story could just be a person and then have human story. Just really quick, in shape with an O. And then the world story doesn't need to look like a world, just like some little wiggles to kind of give the idea of countries. And then world story. The news story was a bit more challenging to try and figure out how to do that, and it got me critically thinking.
Good.
So if you have a better idea, if anybody has a better idea, I would love to hear it. Please send it to me via socials or whatever. So the world story, the news story, I was thinking that old the time, and then it could be future going forwards.
Okay, yeah.
Story. And then the untold story could be a speech bubble with an X on it. And if you wanted to use it as a container, you'd maybe want to put the X just down in the corner so that the rest was all blank, and you'd maybe want the face to be empty as well. But yeah, these are just containers that I came up with and thought of.
I really like them. Yeah, really like them.
You can use them in lots of different ways as well. Either get students to copy in their notebooks and answer the questions that way, or
really nice.
Like I said, put them on the whiteboard or a flip chart.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah.
I'm going to remember to go back to my webcam now instead of my visualizer.
Yeah, good.
And
okay, I really like that idea.
I'll do the last few slides. Okay, so I've got this is another favorite from TinyView. So this is called itchyfeetcomic.com, and it's all about traveling the world and interactions and international communication, which our students need a lot of. I'm just going to give you a little minute to read it. So basically this panel, what's the difference between behind and beyond? Beyond is like a past thing, I think. So it's when should I say I'll bring it there, and when should I say I'll take it there? Depends, time of day maybe. And how can I stop confusing tough though through trough, thought and thorough? Wow. My students, my literacy class would love that one. Wouldn't give them any anxiety whatsoever. Which looks so similar, but it's completely different. I have no idea. And then this panel with absolutely nothing in it, just says so much. Right, aren't you a native speaker? And I'm going to add the quotation marks there, the supposed native speaker. write, which makes me totally unqualified to teach it. So again, this is another global issue of native speakerism and the belief that if you're a so-called native speaker, if you're from a country where you may have learned English from birth, you may be more qualified to teach it, which is not true in the slightest. In many ways, it makes people who have learned it are much more familiar with the grammar, etc., and the language, and we really need to change that and have equity for all teachers of English and for all students. And I was doing a class a couple of days ago about study skills, and so many of my students wrote that they wanted to sound like a native, and I thought, why don't you mean proficient? I've been trying to challenge them on this and talk about this. So this is a good way of bringing that discussion into class, and to really get the discussion going about language being global and English being global, and how 80% of language users are actual English language users haven't learned it from or language learners have learned it. So,
and I think comics like this, they're just perfect to talk about these difficult topics. You know, there's a saying that we have in Bosnia. It goes something like, I can't really translate it into English, but like you tell the truth, the reality through joke, you know, so indirectly. But you know, as I said, it's really, I cannot translate it into English. It's not that powerful. But basically through comics, you know, something that we look at as something that is very light and funny, you know, and for entertainment, well, actually they can have a great effect on so many things. And I think this is a perfect example of how we can introduce that topic of native speakerism even in teacher training sessions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a great example we can do with a comic such as this one. And perfect.
There's one more, because I really love Itchy Feet. I got a bit carried away, and this kind of reminds me a lot of me learning Spanish. So not very much in the way of text in this one. So great for beginner students as well. You could maybe just change the last panel to make the language a bit simpler, really.
It's true.
Or you maybe don't even need the last panel, or you can get them to fill in the blanks in the last panel. What did they say? But for me, when I'm listening to Spanish, sometimes I'm like, what was that? I think I got it. Oh no, really didn't. And it's so relatable to our language learners.
It is.
So check out Itchy Feet, check out Gemma Carell. There's another one called Lunar Baboon, which is really nice and has quite a lot of parenting stuff and quite a lot of green language as well, like environmental stuff. Okay. So this has been, I've really enjoyed. Thanks so much, Aleksandra, for agreeing to do this.
No, thank you.
And for sharing all your amazing ideas. There's so many. I love all I loved everything about it. I really enjoyed.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
So if you want more information about me, you can go to emilybrysonelt.com, and I've got a whole load of freebies. One is, I've actually just posted it up today, is on sketchnoting. So if you want some information about creating sketch notes with your classes, I've got this adult ESOL phonics lesson plan, which is basically a hand-drawn comic using s-a-t-p-n-e sounds for phonics. So st-an, p-a-n, t-a-p. And there's a little video with that of me drawing it, and some literacy materials with it. There's a whole load of different icons for hashtag ELT can do eco to go along with ELT footprint stuff, and if you like green topics. And there's also an ebook on graphic facilitation for English language teachers, and active meditation if you want to do some meditation with your students. But for me, I've got an overactive brain. I can't switch it off. Meditation is really difficult for me. So But I do draw. I use drawings to help me to meditate. So yeah, you can get them from emilybrysonelt.com/freebies. And Aleksandra's got some big news.
Yeah, well, I do have a course on visual arts and ELT. So it starts on the 25th. There is still time to register. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And visual arts and ELT is all about using graphic novels, comics, street art, fine art, and photography in teaching and learning foreign languages. So if you're interested in something like that, you can take a look at the website and what the course is all about. The registration is until the 20th, but if you're really interested in doing the course, it's not a problem. We can always discuss the registration deadline. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. You can just send me an email. I'm very responsive to email, so it won't take me days and days to reply, okay? So I really want to thank Emily again for inviting me to do this today with her. Thank you for being here today. I hope that Emily and I kind of got you thinking about how you can use doodling and comics and graphic novels in your teaching as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, Emily, again.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so inspired. I'd actually really love to do your course. I'm going to go and look in my diary and see if I've got any time.
Well,
some time away from somewhere.
Yeah, there will be another cohort in the autumn. So if
okay, cool.
You can make it in March, then we can just do that in September, October.
Oh, great. Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's been on my radar for a while actually to do your course. So hopefully.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Emily.
So there's also, if you would like to join one of my courses, I have various courses online that you can join up to at any point. So Ready to Build Your Visual Vocabulary is basically learning how to draw like a child, as we mentioned at the beginning. Basically very simple ways to communicate visually. Like can you be drawn really quickly on the whiteboard or using a visualizer. Basically developing your visual vocabulary and ability to communicate and to make your whiteboards more supportive, etc. And then if you want an add-on to that, we've got the introduction to graphic, I've got the introduction to graphic facilitation for English language teachers, and it basically draws on graphic organizers, visual templates, using hand-drawn metaphors, making GIFs. There's lots and lots of really cool activities that involve hand-drawn visuals in class. And if you would like to have a bit of Canva magic and a bit of graphic organizer, hand-drawn graphic organizers, then Claire Hayward's session is available as well, where we talk all about graphic organizers. She talks about creating them in Canva. I talk about hand-drawing them. I'm more than happy to come and deliver bespoke training for your whole team if you would like that. In sketchnoting, for example, or even to your students. Maybe you want me to come in or online and do a session with your students for sketchnoting. And the other online course that I have at the moment is Teaching Tracks and Drawing Hacks, which is using music and doodles in the classroom. So that will be available very, very soon on my site. And I'll also be providing sketchnoting ones. I'm working on a sketchnoting one at the moment. So maybe when you're watching this, if you're watching it on YouTube, you'll get to see that. Feel free to get in touch with me at Emily Bryson ELT as well. I'm quite often on social media. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please ask them in the chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, etc., then write in the comments and hopefully we'll get back to you. Thank you so much. Have you got anything else to add, Aleksandra? No,
I just wanted to say thank you again. Thanks everyone for being here today. Yeah, if you would like to do the course, just get in touch. If you need any kind of teacher training, get in touch as well. I hope that I have also time to do one of Emily's courses and learn how to draw finally, so my students don't make fun of me.
That would be so much fun. We can draw our own graphic novels. Be creating graded
Why
readers
not?
in a few years, graded graphic
Why not?
novels.
Why not?
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks so much, everybody.